Hi, video one. So today is April 13th, Monday, and I just wanted to check in with you and then talk to you guys about the calendar again and then go over the sound presentation. Wednesday, you guys will have a sound quiz about recording and just kind of wanted to summarize all the things you might could expect on the quiz. Then Thursday, I'm going to record myself again going over like actual editing with Premiere Pro, and then Friday will be like the summative quiz with like every kind of quiz, sound quiz question there could be. So since we already had the one about the documentary about like jobs in the field, and then this next quiz is going to be about recording devices, and then the last one will be about editing and mixing, and then this last quiz will be like the summative kind of culmination of all these things that we've talked about. So I am going to share my screen with you. Okay, so there it is. And so first I wanted to show you the calendar. Okay, so far, just as a review, we had this like cuts and transition presentation. And you should have watched me talk about that. And then you should have taken the quiz, and that was worth something. And then you picked a video that you analyzed, and that was due after spring break. Then there was this King Kong sound documentary, and then you took a quiz after you watched it. And then last week was I gave you 4 days of videos to watch, and you should have watched all those videos. And then on today, the 13th, there was a slate video to watch. And right now, Tuesday the 14th, you're watching the sound presentation. And then you'll take the recording quiz. There'll be the last part of the sound presentation about mixing, and then you'll have the cumulative sound mixing quiz. And then on this Monday, I'll go over the very final summative, which is pretending that you're about to film a movie that includes everything we've learned about sound and everything we've learned about like the theory and the art of editing. And so I'll expect a log line of plot structure and then storyboards. And then the storyboards will be due on the last day that summatives are due, without you actually recording, the film. So let me bring back this sound presentation. Sorry, this like thing's in the way. Okay. All right, so let me bring this up. And just as a reminder, these were the films that you should have watched. So the first one was Seen with Your Ears. And this one was that emphasis on the fact that people forget that the 2 ways that like a movie gets into your head is the visuals as well as the audio. And a lot of people forget the audio unless the audio is really bad. And then you're like, oh, this is really terrible. But again, you don't think about it until you're actually watching the movie, and then when you're watching it, you're like, this is bad. I can't hear them. Things are, they're maybe you hear ambient noise, and so that's kind of like this overall idea with this first one. This next video was the King Kong documentary. So this was all the videos. It was a 7-part series about the different kind of careers you could have in sound. You guys probably remember Tribeca, now they're just called Flashpoint College, came in. They actually have a sound recording jobs, and this is really popular that you have to have when you're making major motion film or commercial. You actually have to have all these people. You have to have sound mixers, you have to have recording artists, you have to have Foley artists, you have to have all these different people mixed together to actually get the good quality audio that, again, people don't think about because it's not right in front of their eyes, but it's a huge part of commercials and videos and movies. The next video you were supposed to watch was Recording 101. And honestly, I watched this twice, before I kind of ingested everything that he talked about, because I was aware about sound patterns and phantom power. But I even had watched videos about how sound works, you know, but it was kind of a lot to watch this guy talk about all of it all in a row. And again, the big idea here is to walk away with the sound patterns that he actually talks about, the transducer types, and then this like mention of phantom power, okay, which I'm going to go over again. Next, I have this picture linked to the page that has 3 videos, but also has really good infographics about just the different kinds of recording devices, and then this idea of proximity, okay? And then we watched this video with this guy who has this cheap trick, which is if you don't have a microphone, if you don't have a slate, how do you still get good audio when you don't have a microphone? And he has an MP3 recorder, but now, you know, our cell phones work in the same way that you could actually record you know, somebody really far away, 100 yards away. You can put, you know, your cell phone on record and record their sound, and then, you know, bring that actual recording into your editing, you know, later. So that's kind of this idea that you can get around without using fancy equipment. Okay, so this comes from, this graph is kind of from the proximity effect. And the idea here is that you really should have your subject less than 10 feet apart from your camera to get really good normal audio, okay? But we can see that when you guys were recording this year, and I saw it in some of, especially when we're recording in i214, there's echo, there's all this ambient noise, there's people talking, and it really depends on the environment that you are filming in, that this might not be the case. You could be less than 10 feet away and the audio still is really bad, okay? So, but the idea is that when you move the mic closer to the source, the person usually talking, or maybe you're getting effects, that the audio is clearer. And then when we are rewatching a film, then we can actually hear what's going on, and it seems natural, and it's not really pulling us away from the story that we're watching, okay? Versus that, you know, when your subject or the audio source is farther away, the proximity is farther away, then you're going to have sound drop off, and you're going to be like, what? Or again, you're going to have people missing what's going on in the story because you're not getting really good audio. And again, that's like this proximity, you know, closer, usually more clear, farther away, it starts to drop off. And then, but even if you have the subject really, really close, you start having more bass. And then again, sometimes you can't hear, you know, because you have these like very white overtones, you know, and stuff like that. So that's like something to think about in terms of the proximity. Next we have, they showed you a lot of different microphones, but the basic ones is we have this handheld one. We noticed that it was very durable, but it's like, who would use this? A news reporter, you know, a lounge singer, you know, and it's very, you know, or your singer, and that's very durable. But for like movies, you're kind of like, when would I actually use this, you know, for actually making a film? Versus we do have a boom mic, and you can have your boom mic on your camera. But again, think about proximity. But it's going to be better than just the on camera, you know, the microphone that's in the camera, versus putting this boom on a pole, which we do have, and then actually having somebody hold it up, you know, over the person talking. And then last but not least, we have lavalier, and you could have wired or wireless lavaliers. We actually have wired ones, so really, really long cords, and you plug it into your camera, versus there's some that have a little box. The box goes on the back, and you can probably have seen, you know, movie, like, I'm trying to think about, like, I don't know, you see the Jersey Shore or some kind of reality show like that. When somebody kind of shows their back, you'll see that they have the wireless box with the zoom, you know, and all that. And it's taking up all the space, you know, in their clothing behind them. And then they have the, you know, the wireless lab kind of like in, and then it's wirelessly transmitting to a transceiver on the camera to get the external sound on it. So those are 3 kind of basic main kind of microphones you'd probably be using for production. And then I wanted to review the 2 types of connections. So we have XLR, And we actually only have one camera that uses XLR, and that's the really huge one. And I haven't really pulled it out a lot just because we have way more 70Ds and we have more M50s than we ever had before. So it's not really well used. It's a really huge quality camera, but it's not really great, right, for like bringing out into the field. So the XLR just realized it uses phantom power, which means that there's not there's no, the source of the power is from the actual camera itself. There is no like separate plug to power the microphone. Okay, versus we have mostly 3.5 millimeter stereo mini jacks because that's what our cameras use. And just note with that, that those kind of microphones all require to have battery. So they don't use phantom power, they actually use power from battery sources. And the thing about that is remembering to turn the microphone on and to actually have batteries in it. And then also to turn it off, because a lot of people come back and they're like, my microphone's not working, it's not turning on. It's because nobody turned it off, and then it just slowly runs out of juice. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so here's our 70D, and I just wanted to point out that we have this little opening here, this little jacket. It kind of opens up, and this is where you can plug a 3.5 millimeter microphone in. It has a jack there for it. Now notice, unfortunately, that there's no headphone jack, meaning that I cannot, you know, plug in my mic and then also plug in a headphone and kind of have it on while the scene's going on to actually hear that, you know, it's recording properly. And, you know, that really sucks. Okay. So because of that, that means that you're going to actually have to record something, stop, and then on the camera, review the film to make sure that there's not ambient noise that you're not aware of, or that the levels are correct. Maybe you'll replay and be like, oh, it's really light, or oh, it's too loud, you know. So that's kind of the downfall of the 70Ds, is that there's not the headphone jack. Okay, on our M50s, we also have the same thing. Again, note that there's no headphone jack, so we can't listen live to the audio that the camera is recording. So here's our equipment that we actually have available to you. First of all, we have these, it's a lavalier mic, but it's wired. So it has like it's almost like 100 feet, I swear to God. This really long wire. Notice that you do have to turn the mic on, and these batteries are expensive and they're very limited. And this is, again, the problem that I find is that people don't turn it off after they use them. So that's kind of like my main thing here is when you're using these is to make sure that you turn them on when you're using them, but you turn them off when you're not. Notice that it has a 3.5 millimeter jack to go into our 70Ds and our M50s. It's called the Polson. And you actually feed the cord under the actor's shirt or dress or something like that. And then you clip it up here somewhere close because of the proximity. And it uses this very specific battery, an LR44, which I obviously can't just get at Target or whatever. So another reason why it's hard to get to them, and they're limited and they're expensive. So note that it takes omnidirectional. Okay, so when we thought about those patterns, it's a big circle. It's actually picking up all the audio, not just me, but also, you know, everybody around me. Okay, so think about that, like when you'd want to actually use a wired lav. Okay, the other type of microphone we have is an onboard microphone, but you could also use it as a boom. And again, it has a 3.5 here, but we also have extension wire and a boom pole. So you can actually put these on the camera, or you can put it on the boom pole and actually have somebody hold it. So notice this will slide onto the hot shoe, which is the top of the camera. The power is that it does not have batteries. It is actually phantom. And notice that the sound pattern is super cardioid polar pattern. So we probably remember that from Recording 101, where it looks like a butt and then another heart kind of coming around it. So that same one you'd find with, you know, a boom mic. Okay, and then this is the hot shoe. So this is where that would slide onto if you're using it on board on the camera versus on a boom pole. All right, And next we have another Rode video mic, and it looks just like the Go. Okay, you notice, but it has a different kind of connection. Okay, so let's go to the other one. And this one is the one that you would want to use as a boom mic. And it has the connection, it has the pole. And this one also has a little fluffy windsock. And so when you see that, that's what this thing is called, as a windsock. This is, you would put this on over the mic when you're shooting outside, so that it doesn't and that kind of crushes that windy sound that you'd pick up if it was windy outside. So again, it's just supposed to kind of reduce ambient noise and reduce the wind sound. So this is a 3.5 millimeter jack. It can slide on the hot shoe, or this boom pole attaches 3.5 millimeter. This one does have battery, and it takes a 9-volt battery. And this is super cardioid polar pattern. So again, it's that upside down butt with a little heart underneath it pattern. Okay. Other equipment we have is we have slates, and we have plenty of slates now, but when we didn't, or maybe you forgot to bring one when you're on set, is to actually use your hands when you're recording, and that helps you sync the audio with the video in post-production. From that slate video, you should have walked away with what is the person that's slating supposed to say. First they say mark, and then the roll right here, and the scene. Remember that you wanted to skip the letters I and O, and usually they say the word, so they'll say like alpha 8 or something like that, and then the take right here. And then usually for the production and the director and the camera, usually that stuff kind of stays the same except for the date. And then we have INT, which means are you shooting interior? EXT, are you shooting exterior? Are you shooting during the day or night? Also things to remember is maybe that maybe a scene doesn't have any audio. So you actually have somebody slate and put their hand in it, and then close it, and then you know that the person isn't listening for a place to actually sync audio in. Notice that our slates all use, you can't use just any Sharpie marker. You actually use dry erase marker to actually write the production information on as well. Okay, and so you should have watched the slate video. It's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but it was really good. And then I just wanted to go over the menus of our different cameras. So it has the same, the 70D and the M50 both have the same Canon menu. So once you plug in any of these, you know, the boom or the Rode or the lavalier, you actually have to go to the menu and go to sound recording and change it from audio to manual. Okay, so this will say sound recording, and then we'll say manual. And then, so again, you're changing it to manual, the recording level. And then there's a couple of these like words. You're like, what is this? So a wind filter is, if you are recording outside, I would actually turn this on. And when it says attenuator, this is reduces distortion caused by loud sound. So depending on what you're recording, maybe it's not just two people talking. Maybe you know that there's going to be like a physical altercation and they're going to be slamming people against the lockers or kicking them. I don't know. Something that you know the scene will actually have a lot of boom, loud noises. Then you'd actually want to turn the attenuator on. So you actually have to be aware of what you're actually going to be filming before you actually you record the sound. And then also notice that this is only when you're controlling the internal microphone of the actual scene. Okay, so if you're only using the internal camera, that's the only time that this would work. It would not work for external microphones, the boom mic, all that, those other things. So that wind filter attenuator is only for when you're not using these external microphones. Okay, the last type of microphone that we have available to you is called the Blue Yeti. It's really good. So when I'm actually recording YouTube videos at school, this is the one that I use, and it's like really, really good audio. And it's considered an external desktop microphone. You actually connect it to your computer with a USB port. It connects to the computer USB. You record through Premiere Pro, which is what I'm going to go over in the next presentation. Notice that it's phantom power. It doesn't have another power input. It's taking the power from the computer. And you actually have the choice right here. You can actually control the volume, and you can even press a mute. But on the back of the microphone, you'll see that you have 4 pattern choices. So cardioid, bidirectional, omnidirectional, and stereo. So what does that mean? Oh, and so this is the back of it. And so this is the 4 patterns, and it only shows you these little icons. You're probably like, what do those icons mean? And then, so we're going to go over, which one you should pick. But then we also have this gain, and what gain means is the sensitivity. So you might actually have to record yourself and listen back to it, and if it sounds like really too loud or scratchy, or you get some feedback, then you want to turn the gain down. So that's what's kind of cool, is that you can actually turn up the sensitivity and turn it down. Okay, so let's talk about the 4 Yeti sound patterns. Okay, so I recommend, we'll start off with the one I recommend, which is the cardioid. And that guy said that it looked like an upside down butt, but I think it's called cardioid because it's shaped like a heart. So that's why I think that it looks like that. Now notice that we have a person talking directly to a mic, and that's why we would want to use cardioid. So usually you're using that desktop mic to do a podcast, to do a voiceover, to do vocals, to do instruments. So that's when you would want to use that cardioid setting. So what are these 2 like ones that look like rings next to each other? So notice we have the person facing it, but we want to also get sound on the left and right, and notice that it's not going to pick up any sound in front of it. So this would be good if you actually have multiple people doing vocals, an ensemble choir, or multiple instruments. You'd want to have it on stereo mode. Okay, then we have the circle, which means it's like taking in all the audio, just like a lavalier mic. Omnidirectional, notice that here's the person talking into the mic, but it's also picking up audio all the way around it. So that's really good if you're, recording a conference call, you're using it for field recording, like you're actually gonna plug this into a computer and bring your laptop to a thing and record. I don't know if you have limited means to actually record things, or you're recording an event or an orchestra. And then we have bidirectional, which is they're not actually looped together. They're just next to each other. So it looks like the infinity symbol. And this is 2 people talking into the mic. So if you were doing an interview, but using just the one mic, again, if you have more than one instrument, or maybe a duet when you're singing, bidirectional would be a really good idea to use. So when you're thinking about the quiz, think that you might see these symbols and what those symbols actually mean. The overlapping rings is stereoid. This one's probably easy to remember. The heart is cardioid. The circle is omnidirectional, taking in all of the sound all around it. And then we have bidirectional for 2 people by. And then just a note, when you're using the Yeti microphone, this is actually how you're supposed to set it up. So pretend this is me talking, the Yeti is talking into the microphone. So it actually should be straight up and down. It shouldn't be pointed at the mouth. Otherwise the whole pattern, it doesn't matter, because you're actually not, it's thinking that it's supposed to be taking in, audio in this direction. Okay. So I'll come back to this later this week, the recording and stuff like that. But hopefully that kind of helped you kind of summarize all the different parts, the different types of microphones, what we have available, and the kind of questions that I'm going to ask on the quiz. Again, if you haven't, then you need to go back and watch all these little videos before you actually take the quiz on Wednesday. Okay, so until then, I hope you guys are doing well. Let me know if you guys have any questions. You guys can email me. I get back pretty quickly. All right, talk to you later.